We're into our fourth form of communication this week, which is public communication or public speaking. As a reminder, this is likely what you were thinking this class was going to be about at the beginning. When we're thinking about communication, we often think about those moments in time, kind of like this one, where I had to prepare something to say in front of a lot of people watching it. Public communication is one of those things that is the most intentional, formal, and goal-oriented of all of the forms of communication. And so we're going to be spending a lot of time within this form talking about those moments when we have to be prepared to talk about something specific. We shouldn't be going off the cuff. We should know what we're talking about. We should have evidence, we should be prepared, and we should be ready to maybe answer questions in relation to what it is that we're saying to others. Like the past couple forms of communication, we want to talk about those three contexts again. We can see very clearly maybe what public communication is and how it might manifest, but maybe a little bit more difficult to see where it might manifest. So talking about the spiritual, relational, and professional context, let's dig into where public communication might fit. Within the spiritual communication context, I think one thing that we've all either experienced or maybe even done ourselves is seeing someone give a public communication about their spiritual journey, their testimony, or what their faith means to them. This might be something that you have engaged in the past, maybe publicly for a smaller group or even a larger group, or it might just be something that you've experienced somebody else doing. But if we're wanting to tell our story about what our faith means to us, where we've been, what we're still struggling with for the public good, so that other people might take it and learn from it, we really need to hone that story down. We need to make sure that we're telling the story succinctly, that we make sure we know what our message is when we bring it across, so that it's not just this rambling of our interactions with Jesus and how they have informed who we are today. Now, that's not to say that your spiritual story, your faith journey, when you give it publicly, should be this scripted, memorized, kind of sterile thing. I think a lot of times when we think about public communication, we think about this like robotic discussion of a topic by a person who's spent so much time thinking about it that there's no passion or energy or emotion embedded in their words. One thing that we'll be reading through this semester to hopefully debunk that is a book about who does that really well, and those people are individuals who talk for things like TED Talks. So there's a book that the creator of TED Talk made that talked about what the forms of communication or the things within communication are that really elevate stories. Things like connection and narrative and personality. And those are things that you should include in your spiritual story or your faith journey or your testimony if you're wanting to give that to a group of people. The way that public communication plays a role in relational communication might be a little bit more difficult to make those connections, but I want you to be thinking about times when you might be in charge of giving a public message for people that you care about. So if you're thinking about maybe a friend group that you have and you're wanting to give a public message to campus about what you and your group of friends are wanting campus to do or people on campus to realize, you are the public speaker representing other people. And if those people have interpersonal relationships with you, it's like a two-tiered manifestation of communication, right? You're giving a public speech, but you're doing that with these potential relational consequences. If you say something incorrectly or you give forth a bad message in the eyes of your friends or those who you have relationship with, that could ruin the interpersonal relations or make them really challenging. And so with public communication, in a relational context, you want to think about how you're viewing the audience of the message. Are you saying things in such a way that those who might be standing with you would be in agreement with? And who are you talking to? And how are you engaging in that message creation in a sense? So one thing that we'll think about with relational communication and relational context with public communication is think about moments when you are going to be in charge of a message that might have implications for relationships too. And we'll dig into some examples in the weeks to come. The last thing is talking about how public communication can be related to our professional life. And this is something that might be really hard to think about, especially if you're not sure what your professional life is going to look like in the next couple of years. But I guarantee you that you will have a time in your professional life where you're going to have to make a public communication to people. And I don't want you to think about public communication as me standing in front of a microphone with a podium in front of 400 people, because not everyone is going to do public communication that way. But if you are in charge of running a meeting at your work, even if there's 20 people in the room, you're still engaging in public communication. You're one person giving a message to many. And in doing so, all of the principles still apply about connection and narration and research and evidence and preparation. You're just putting it within your context of your work. Even something like an interview could be considered public communication, particularly if you're interviewing for a lot of people or that a lot of people will see that interview down the road. You're wanting to present yourself in such a way that you're telling people about who you are, what you value, and what you care about, and you're hoping that that message gets across really clearly. So we'll be digging into a couple of different professional contexts with public communication, asking you to think about places and times that you'll be giving a speech talking about something of importance to a group of people to make sure that you're ready to really take that challenge head on to make sure that your message comes across clearly.